Greetings, fellow cellists. My name is Yoni Draiblate. I'm the principal cellist of the Florida Orchestra. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one of my most favorite excerpts in the classical repertoire, and that is the exposition of the fourth movement of the Fourth Symphony by Johannes Brahms. We would be here all day if I counted all the ways I love this piece, and particularly this movement. But perhaps it's a good idea to talk a little bit about the elements that construct this excerpt, just so you have a better understanding on articulation and types of sound, and perhaps what fingering and bowings to use. So in the very beginning of the excerpt, which starts at letter A, those dots, forte with dots, and a lot of vibrato. It needs a lot of character, because what happens, the rest of the ensemble goes pam, 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 and then we go pam, pam. So that subject kind of goes back and forth between the strings and the winds. So it's I don't know, I just love it. So make sure you give it a lot of, even though it's short, make sure and not, otherwise it tends to get a little stuck. One thing to be careful of, speaking of getting stuck, is to play in such a way that makes it sound like you're playing in 3/4. Yes, the excerpt is in fact in 3/4, but the feeling of it should be more in one. Allegro, energico, appassionato. So it should not necessarily feel 1, 2, 3, 1, but rather, in my opinion, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1. So then we have a better understanding of the musical line and the musical sentence. The next big section is right when we finish the passing quarter notes at measure 31, 2, 3. Measure 33, that's where the violins have the melody, and we are just supporting. So from dots, we now become very, very connected. To connect even the up bows to the down bows. Every note I like to feel like almost like there's invisible glue between each of the notes. The challenging thing is to make it sound connected even though we have a string crossing. So a little bit of a trick that I learned over the years is every time you have a string crossing and you want to make sure that it doesn't sound like you have a string crossing. In other words, you don't want to hear the technique. In the very end of the note, I do a little bit of a crescendo, followed with a little bit of vibrato. It's very easy to overdo it, but I found that if it's done right, it creates this sense that it's just one string, and that's what it should really feel like. It just should go like yo, it should really, really be connected, in my opinion. And the same thing, of course, even more so in measure 41, letter B. Especially the last note and the first note of each measure should be very, very connected. Now, the bowings I choose, starting down at measure letter B, measure 41, and then another down, up, another up, as if it was written legato. But instead of writing legato over 6 notes, we just separate the one note, but it's still in the same direction of the bow. That's how I personally look at it. And one of the other reasons is if we do down bow on each group, it can be very hard to make it sound connected and at the same time have enough bow, because remember, we're still in forte, we're still in appassionato, we need a lot of bow, so it can be very, very challenging to play a fast bow and not give an accent. Yeah, so that's why I chose the bowings that I chose rather. Moving on to measure 47, 8, 9. Same thing, super legato. You don't have to do it, but my fingerings for that, if you maybe want to know, I finish on the 4th finger, and before I start the triplet, I extend. Where I come from, my school of cello is big on extensions. We're lazy, we don't like to move much. Second finger. 2, 1, 3. So we play loud and then louder. Now here, I'll beat to letter C. You can either play or both are valid and both sound good. So it's whether you like the cleaner approach or that's up to you, your principal and your maestro in the end of the day. That's the rest of the orchestra. Don't sing in your audition. So now moving on, that's sforzando. Very short, almost like somebody is taking a tennis racket and going like this, or ping pong if you don't like tennis. Sorry. Now, this forte piano. The trick to have a really effective forte pianos, that's a tip for all forte pianos ever in existence, is to play on the string. Remember, a forte piano is different from a sforzando, so we're not going to hit the string, but rather we're going to establish a good contact with the string, and then a very fast but light bow. And the real trick, this is the $1 million tip. The real trick is to get, it's almost like a race, who gets to the upper F of the bow the fastest and who stops the sound the fastest. So I play forte piano. When I see forte piano, I immediately go to my forte piano tool bag and I pull this tool and I go, and I just stop the sound. For a brief moment in time, the bow just stops. the same thing applies to the second fortepiano, 4 measures before letter D. Same thing. In this case, the only difference is that the four measures are slurred versus separated. For those 16 notes, and that's the last thing I want to share with you about this excerpt, I've played it separate with a lot of heft, and I've also played it, and when I say I played it, the maestro that we were working with had this interpretation. So I've played it heft, with a lot of heft, and I also played it very much on the string. So either way works, either way is valid, and there are recordings, there are 1,000 recordings playing this way, and there's about 1,000 recordings, well, maybe not 1,000, but there's a lot of recordings playing each way. So I don't have a preference, can't really be wrong, as long the one thing that is universal is that every note has a lot of character, even the 16 notes. A lot of vibrato, a lot of fast vibrato, a lot of character. Then we get into the next section when you actually play the whole thing, where we lead to the one of the most beautiful moments ever, where the flute has a solo. It's not in the excerpt, but it's coming in the next few measures. So anyway, I hope these tips helped you a little bit. Have fun, play well, and see you next time.